Hades is a lonely king who destroyed the world after he was betrayed. However, when a cute princess goes back in time and saves him, he falls madly in love with her and would do anything to protect her. Before this, Princess Jill is running away from royal guards, but she eventually gets caught by Prince Gerald of the Kratos Empire, who announces that she will be executed tomorrow. Looking at his cruel face, Jill remembers the day she met him for the first time at a party, and back then, Gerald seemed like the kindest man in the world. Unlike other girls, Jill spent her life on the battlefield, and while others saw her as a monster, she didn't mind because Gerald still loved her. That is, until she learned of his true nature. One day, Jill walked in on Gerald doing Alabama practices with his own sister.
Bombastic side-eye.
And before she could tell anyone, Gerald put her in jail over false charges and ordered her execution. Presently, Gerald tells the guards to take her away, but Jill quickly subdues them and attacks Gerald. The man blocks her attack, so Jill has no choice but to run. When she finds herself cornered, she decides to go out on her own terms and jumps off the tower, so Gerald orders her men to fire arrows at her. A magical spear impales her, and she recalls the day Gerald proposed to her and wishes she had swiped left on this four-eyed idiot so her life would turn out differently. Just then, the clock reverts, and Jill finds herself in front of her parents, which confuses her because they both died years ago. Her parents tell her to collect herself because she's at Gerald's birthday party, so as she sees her reflection in the mirror, she finally clocks that she has traveled 6 years back in time. When she sees Gerald, she gets scared and immediately runs out to the balcony, where she realizes she can rectify her mistakes with this second chance. Just then, Gerald shows up and is about to propose to her, but Jill runs away from him again, making him wonder if he smells bad. Even then, Gerald chases after her like a desperate simp, so in the moment of panic, she grabs a random dude from the back and says she's in love with him. Hearing this, the dude agrees to make her his wife, but hearing his voice sends shivers down her spine. That is because the person she chose is Hades, the cursed emperor who pulled a John Wick on the kingdom of Kratos in Jill's previous life. As Hades kneels in respect for his new fiancée, Jill is so shocked that she passes out. Later, she wakes up in the guest room, and Hades immediately arrives to check up on her, much to her dismay. He then gets on his knees and gently asks if she's sure about marrying him, which surprises Jill because she thought of him as a cruel maniac. In her previous life, Hades gave the order to execute anyone on sight, including the civilians. So when Jill offered herself in exchange for ending the war, Bro got the ick and left without hurting anyone. At present, Hades is acting like a pookie, and Jill can't help but feel rizzed up by his charms. Just then, Gerald walks into the room with his guards, so Hades immediately confronts him for being ungentlemanly. At this, Gerald tells Hades to screw off because Jill was promised to her 3,000 years ago, and Jill realizes her idiotic parents had secretly engaged her with Gerald. Despite this, Hades calmly tells Gerald that Jill chose him, so Gerald gets pissed and orders his guards to seize him. However, Hades makes them kneel with nothing but his aura before carrying Jill in his arms and casually walking away. He then promises that he won't let anyone harm her and uses a teleportation spell to take her to his ship, which is already en route to his nation of Rave. He then gives her a change of clothes and offers her tea, and Jill plays along because she's desperate to escape Gerald. She then asks him if he's really serious about marrying her, and Hades excitedly claims that she's the perfect woman for him. Hearing this, Jill accidentally slips out that she was just acting, so Hades gets all serious and asks what her true intentions are. Left with no choice, Jill admits that it was all a ruse to escape Gerald, prompting the dragon god Rave to show himself and laugh at the virgin loser for thinking anyone would choose him. Although heartbroken, Hades apologizes to Jill for thinking that he was good enough for her, and he even promises to make it up to her for this mistake. He then decides to take her back to her homeland, but Jill doesn't want to fall into Gerald's hands again, and Hades also seems like a really nice guy with 8 inches of plot. So in that moment, she makes up her mind that she's going to marry Hades, but Hades thinks she's playing him again. However, she kneels and apologizes to Hades, promising not to go back on her word again. She also vows to dedicate her life to him, so after confirming with her multiple times, Hades happily embraces her and promises to wait till she's ready to become his wife. He then apologizes for moving without thinking, only to get on one knee and kiss her hand, which makes her blush. After that, he asks Rave to create the dragon consort ring around her finger, which is proof that she's received the dragon god's blessing as the emperor's wife. However, they will have to tell the others that they're engaged until the wedding ceremony takes place. Hades also promises to protect her, but just then, their ship is attacked, and so he teleports them outside, where he gets injured. Hades tells Rave to take Jill away, but Jill stays calm and confidently claims that she will protect him too, because she's already dedicated her life to him. She then uses her magical prowess to lift the ship and throw it at the shore before blocking the cannon fire with her bare fist. After that, she returns to the shore, where she tells the guards to take Hades to the infirmary. While she's chatting with Rave, the dragon god asks him to be careful, because only she and Hades can see her. so people might think she's talking to herself. She also notices that they're in Baleberg, which was an infamous murder site in her previous life, but that event hasn't happened yet. Just then, a blonde girl named Sphere anxiously asks the guards about Hades, but she's more worried about the fact that Hades brought a cute girl along with him. Rave then tells Jill that Sphere is in love with Hades, and she's not going to take things lightly. Just then, Sphere walks up to Jill and starts sobbing, vowing that she will not let a 4-foot shoddy steal Hades from her. Later that day, Jill recalls how in Baleberg, there was a feast thrown to celebrate the return of Hades, but when he learned that he was engaged to Sphere, he refused to marry her. This turned Sphere into Harley Quinn, so she murdered the other candidates and then burned the whole palace. However, Sphere doesn't seem like the type to commit such crimes, but even then, Jill vows to stay on guard to prevent another war from breaking out. Just as she recalls some old friends, Rave suddenly appears and informs her that Hades has woken up and he's worried about her. Just then, they hear Hades beat up some guards who didn't recognize him, but that's because he's dressed like a cook and has made croissants for Jill. Someone told him a way to a woman's pants is through her stomach, so he's mastered a full-course meal, so Jill would let him crank it from the back. Hearing all that, Jill feels flustered and argues that she'll never let him hit it just because he's a good cook, but one bite and she's already thinking of a wedding date. However, when Jill asks if he can taste her croissant now, she gets upset and smacks him in the face. She then asks why he snuck out of the palace, and he says he just wanted to see her face, which makes her flustered. He also adds that he ordered Marquess Bale to release Jill and throw her a party, but he defied orders. When Jill asks if Bale intends to rebel, Hades sternly says he'll need balls bigger than Jupiter and Saturn to even think of it. Jill then recalls the massacre and asks him if he's cursed, as people say. Hades then reveals he was born out of a concubine, which is why he could not become king and was sent to the borderlands to die off. However, when his half-brother, the next in line, died of an illness, they chose another half-brother who also died too. From that day onwards, every new prince would die, and people started suspecting that someone was murdering them so Hades could become the next king. The only person who believed in Hades' innocence was another half-brother named Vissel, but he too was born out of a concubine, so no one listened to him. After 5 years of dead princes, the king got terrified and brought Hades back to crown him just so the murders would stop. On coronation day, the previous king vanished and the queen decided to yeet herself, and that's how Hades became the cursed emperor. However, Hades believes Vissel has persuaded everyone to support him, so everything is good now. Sadly for him, Jill knows Vissel will betray Hades in the future, so Hades will execute him, and it'll lead to a massive war. Jill then asks him if he feels hurt over how people treated him, but he diverts by saying it's his duty to protect everyone. He quietly adds that they'll live happily for at least the next 3 years, and although Jill knows he's hiding something, she stays quiet. She then decides to investigate Bale to make sure he's not rebelling, while Hades stays in his chambers and bakes bread and cookies for her. The next day, she sneaks out of the harbor and passes by the church, where she hears Sphere crying to the clergy because Jill has found someone else as his wife. Just then, some soldiers enter the church and take her hostage, and although Jill was there just to gather info, she can't stand and watch them harass Sphere. Meanwhile, Bale misinforms Hades that Jill has taken over the port, and Sphere is taken hostage, so they must eliminate Jill because she's a spy from a rival nation. He then asked Hades' permission to send his men into the port, and Hades gave him permission with a warning that he would be hanged if Jill were proven to be innocent. Meanwhile, Jill and Sphere are tossed into a prison cell by some ruffians, where Sphere tells Jill about his backstory. After her mom died, Bale quickly remarried and sent her into an orphanage, but she often sneaked out to make friends. One day, she saw a dragon and realized she was able to understand basic greetings from dragons. When others saw this, they thought she was weird, and she was left with no friends. Later, when Hades became king, he invited her to the castle and asked her if she could see something on his shoulder, but she could not see anything. Despite this, he was kind to her and would often invite her for tea, so she fell in love with him. When she confessed, Bro rejected her, saying she's too old for his liking, and to make matters worse, Hades brought back a girl even younger than her. Hearing this, Jill feels bad for her, but she can't help her because of the consequences. Just then, a man and a woman are tossed into the room with them, and Jill recognizes them as Zeke and Camilla, which makes her tear up. These two were very close to Jill in her past life, but they were taken away from her, so after seeing them in the flesh, she vows to protect everyone this time. In Jill's previous life, Zeke and Camilla met her at a pub and told her they didn't have magic, and they were from the Rave Empire. When she asked them why they came to Kratos, they told her they didn't even remember because it was a long time ago. At present, Camilla thinks Jill is crying because she got scared of Zeke's ugly face, and this leads to an argument between them. Just then, Jill wipes her tears and breaks the shackles with her sheer strength. Much to everyone's shock, Zeke asks her who she is, but she says that's not relevant and urges them to think of their next move. They spent the next few minutes sharing info and figuring out that the ruffians disguised themselves as soldiers of Kratos, and they've kidnapped Sphere, claiming that they got orders from Jill. Camila also realizes that Bale is the one behind all of this, and he's trying to be the hero by staging a fake rescue mission and also making sure the public here has a negative opinion of Kratos. On top of that, it will tarnish Hades's reputation since he's the one who brought Jill to these lands, and if Sphere were to die, Bale will use this to dethrone Hades. Zeke feels disgusted that Bale would use his own daughter as bait, while Camila wonders where Jill went. Just then, Guard, another member of their party, revealed that he was standing guard at Jill's room, and these ruffians came looking for her. Zeke is confused as to why they were looking for Jill if she's the one who gave them orders, and Camila instantly realizes Jill has nothing to do with this. While the others wonder how to convey all this to Hades, Sphere is horrified to learn that she was a pawn in this scheme, so she vows to tell Hades herself. She also says that it will not be easy for Bale to dispose of her because she's friends with Hades, so when they ask for her testimony, she will find a way to tell him the truth. She strongly believes that Hades will not ignore her cries and help her, so the others should just run away. At this, Jill starts to wonder if this is exactly what happened last time, which led to the massacre of Baleberg, so this time, she decides to change things. She starts by revealing herself as Jill to everyone and assuring them that she has nothing to do with this scheme, but since the enemy doesn't know she's here, that gives them a chance at victory. After Camila and Zeke agree to help, Jill sternly tells Sphere that if she dies, they're all doomed. She promises to protect her, but in return, Sphere must put all the blame on her father, or she will also be punished for his crimes in the future. Sphere asks Jill why she's trying to save her rival in love, so Jill respectfully states that she has no intention of falling for Hades, and their marriage has taken place due to some dire circumstances. Sphere then asks if there's a chance Jill will ditch Hades, but Jill says she can't do that because they're both tied by mutual benefit. While Sphere is still thinking of an answer, Hades is in his chambers, wondering if he should just go cyber psycho on Bale or approach this calmly. Hades already knows that Bale is a traitor, but stepping in at the wrong time can make things worse, so he's waiting for the perfect opportunity to take Bale out. Back at the port, Sphere finally decides to believe Jill and put the blame on her father. After everyone is on board, Zeke asks Jill what their first move is, and she suggests freeing up the imprisoned soldiers and using them to launch a counterattack. Guard immediately reveals that soldiers are being imprisoned at the church, and even though there's no guarantee that the soldiers will join, Jill must take this risk. After that, Jill asks the others to follow her lead as she blows a hole through the wall, using nothing but her Saitama fists. As Zeke and Camila watch in shock, Jill tells them she expects great things from them and promises to protect them. Seconds later, she rushes into the church and frees the soldiers, telling them that she's come to rescue them on Hades's orders as Marquess Bale has rebelled against the kingdom and is using the northern forces as fuel to start the fire. While she's giving her motivational speech, Rave enters the church and hears it all. After her encouraging words, the soldiers rally up behind her, and in the meantime, Hades begins baking for her. Just then, Rave returns and tells him that he's bagged the craziest chick this time because she escaped on her own and has already gathered men to battle the enemy. Not only that, she's told them that Hades sent her to rescue them, so now, they all think highly of her. On top of that, Sphere has agreed to testify against her father, which means Hades won't have to dissolve House Bale, and he also won't have to go psycho on them. Hearing all this, Hades feels flattered as Jill has solved one of his biggest problems in just a few days. Just then, some of Bale's men barged into the room, saying they've come to move him to a secure location. However, Hades uses his intimidation to scare them off, while Jill and her forces continue to take over the port. Just then, the enemy leader shows up and introduces himself as Hugo, asking them to hand over Jill, and he'll withdraw quietly. However, if he refuses to comply, he will set the church on fire. Hearing this, Jill cracks her knuckles and is about to face Hugo, but Camila stops her and Zeke tells her not to be so full of herself. However, after Jill reveals her plan, they tie her up and send her out. Once she comes closer to Hugo, he tells Jill to say her final prayer, but Jill quickly unties the rope and beats the living Jesus out of him. Then, holding him in a choke, she tells Hugo's men to back off, but when they try to attack her, she knocks them out with a single strike along with their ships, leaving Hugo with no escape. Despite this, Hugo smirks as the clergy in the church is also his assassin, but Zek casually thwarts his attempt to harm Sphere. After that, Hugo admits that he was working for Bale, but just then, Bale himself arrives with a dragon to burn everyone away before the news reaches Hades. However, the dragon suddenly stops attacking, leaving Bale confused. Just then, Hades appears and reveals he commanded the dragon to stop, and now it's his turn to Aura Farm. Seeing the king himself, Bale starts to sweat and asks why he's here, so Hades responds that he cannot sit in his room while his wife is in danger. After ordering the dragon to go away, Hades carries Jill in his arms and asks her what happened, so she reveals that the northern forces protected her and Sphere, while also defending the port. Despite this, Bale accuses Jill of being a spy, and asks Hafez to stay in his room, because it's not safe out here. When Hades does not budge, Bale says he will tell everyone that Hades spared an enemy spy because her throat game was elite. At this, Hades suddenly turns towards Hugo and grabs him by the throat, before calling Zeke and Camilla by their names and praising them for the good work. He then threatens to wipe out Hugo and his men if they do not tell him who they are working for, and his sheer aura sends shivers down Hugo's spine. And after he pledges his loyalty to Hades, Hugo reveals that Bale was the mastermind behind this incident. Since this clears Jill of being a spy, Hades turns to Bale, who says no one will believe it, so Hades aura farms on him and stomps on his head. While Hades is asking Bale how he'd like to be executed, his daughter watches with horror in the background. Hades then demands that Bale hand over the authority of Baleberg in exchange for his life, and Jill smiles because she has stopped the massacre that happened in the previous timeline. However, Bale starts laughing and calls Hades a monster, who drove his own mother to insanity and was even responsible for the death of his many half-brothers. Bale also says no one wants Hades to be alive, and Hades admits that although it's true, he is still the Emperor and has a job to do. He then asks the men to arrest Bale and take Sphere in custody for interrogation. That night, as Jill wanders in the Bale's palace, Rave joins him, and she says she's worried about Hades. Rave assures her that although Hades is an idiot, he still knows how to run an empire, and he's trying to make sure people don't follow her only out of fear. Despite this, Jill is worried because bottling up feelings will make Hades numb, and he might turn into a mass murderer like before. Rave admits that Jill is right, also saying that he's spent countless hours trying to make sure Hades does not lose his mind, and Jill thanks him for it. She then suggests they bring out more of Hades's pooky side, but when Rave asks if she's developing feelings for him, she quickly says no. Despite this, Rave guides her to her and Hades's bedroom, where she finds him drunk on the bed. After she wipes him with wet towels, Hades's condition stabilizes, and he wakes up, flattered that Jill is going to take care of him. Jill happily shows him the fruits she brought for him, but when she tries to cut them, she feels annoyed because she doesn't know the first thing about cooking. However, Hades makes her sit between his legs and shows him how to peel an apple, which leaves her shocked and flattered. She then asks if he can make a rabbit, so Jill cuts the apples into the shape of a rabbit, which makes her super excited. She asked when he learned all this, and he said he learned these things to impress his siblings, who didn't like him. Feeling bad, Jill decides to feed him with her own hands, but his reactions make her chuckle as he reminds Jill of her younger brother. She then thanks Hades for not executing the ruffians today, so he says he doesn't want to rule with fear. Jill then holds his hand and says that when Bale said no one wants him to live, he was wrong because she wants him to live. Hearing this, Hades goes red and realizes Jill actually loves him, or she would never say such things. But Jill tells him his threshold for affection is quite low, and he mistakes little acts of kindness for love. At this, the bro hides himself in the blanket and says he's cold, so Jill gets in as well to share body heat with him. Suddenly, Hades pulls out a Riz Daddy move before gently telling her that it's okay for a wife to fall in love with her husband. When Jill asks what about him, he says he cannot do something so awful to her, but she should try to fall in love with him. Hearing this, Jill promises herself that she will try, but her brain overloads and she falls asleep. A few days later, Hades and Jill are hanging out in the park, and he spoils her with his Michelin star chef skills. He then tries to rizz her up, but Camilla and Zeke show up and say it's time for her studies, leaving him bummed. When he tells them that he's failing to make Jill fall for him, they tell him that he shouldn't give up because Jill likes him more than she puts out. They also know Hades is in love with Jill, but Bro is in denial, yet his face is redder than a traffic light. Later, Jill scolds them both for being too casual with the Emperor, but they urge her to be more friendly with Hades, and even use her throat goat skills if she has to win him over. Finally, Jill admits that this is the first time a man has charmed her, so she doesn't know how to act around him. But she quickly clarifies that she is not in love with Hades, nor does she intend to fall for him. Just then, Camilla spots the ring on Jill's finger, and Zeke believes the curse must be real if the ring is real. Hades told Jill that the curse quiets down when she's around, so it makes her wonder if marriage is the way to break Hades's curse. Zeke believes the curse must be placed by goddess Kratos, and Jill recalls a legend in which Kratos and Rave had a difference over how to rule humans, so they split one continent into two. However, the land Rave took was cursed, and it did not grow any crops, that is, until he found a bride called Dragon's Consort with incredible magic, and she built a shield that protected this land from Kratos' curse. Just then, Sphere came running in with a letter for Jill, and once she read it, she froze on the spot. A gust of wind blows the letter into Hades's feet, and he gets hyped up because the letter is from Gerald, who says he's coming to pick Jill up. Meanwhile, Gerald is on his ship, getting pissed over the time he got mogged by Hades, and Bro has memorized a whole book of comeback lines this time around. Meanwhile, Zeke and Camilla discuss Gerald's sudden visit when Jill shows up dressed as a cutie patootie, but her expressions say that she's about to commit war crimes. She says she doesn't know how to look cute, so Sphere suggests putting on some accessories to help her look cute. Jill instead wants a belt with a hidden blade so she can dispose of Gerald anytime she wants because of what he did to her in her previous life. The others don't know about it, so Sphere simply asks Jill to act like she's happy here, which will discourage Gerald from taking her. Jill then meets Hadis, who's mesmerized by her beauty and suggests she braids her hair, but this makes Jill blush hard. Zeke then tells Hadis to stop rizzing and get to the point, so Hadis reveals he's been accused of kidnapping Jill. However, Jill makes a scary face, saying that Gerald's true purpose of visit is something else, only to switch up and promise to protect Hadis. Later, as they walk together, Jill feels useless because she doesn't know how to smile, especially because her mind is filled with hate for Gerald. At this, Hadis says there's a thin line between crazy love and hatred, so he forbids Jill from seeing Gerald. However, Jill doesn't give two forks about his orders and demands that he take her with him. While they're fighting, Zeke and Camilla remind them that they're supposed to get along in front of Gerald, so they agree to put this behind them. Hadis then says he has a way to make Jill smile, but it's risky, and she must promise not to hate him. Jill says she's willing to endure anything, so Hadis causally picks her up and kisses her, asking her to keep replaying this moment in her head. Jill goes red at this, and although she promised not to hate him, she never said anything about slapping him in the face. Later, as they meet Gerald, he wishes to speak to Jill, but she tells him to bug her off. So Hadis tells him that Jill and he had a lover's quarrel on the way, and it's because of Gerald. Gerald asks for an explanation, so Hadis says that when he heard of his visit, he asked Jill if she wanted to go home. So Jill slapped him for not believing in her love. Although angry, Jill is impressed at how she turned this situation against Gerald, so she tells Gerald that there's nothing for him to worry about as she's here by choice. Gerald asks why she left her homeland for Hadis, and she responds that Hadis needs him. At this, Gerald reveals he already knows Hadis is looking for a young bride who can see the dragon god and prevent the curse, so he asks Hadis if he'd let Jill go if she can't undo the curse. To prove it, Gerald says that all contenders to the throne will die, including Bale, who's currently rotting in jail. Just then, a guard rushes into the room and informs them that Bale has died. Later, Camilla reads the report to Jill, which reveals that Bale yeeting himself while imprisoned, and the townfolks are already speculating that it happened due to Hadis's curse. Jill believes it's Gerald's work based on how he was acting during their meeting, and she knows he's capable of such tricks from her previous life. As Zeke wonders if the curse is even real, Camilla adds to the legend, saying that after Kratos' curse was repelled, she got so pissed that she turned herself into a spear and infiltrated the Rave Empire. When the spear was presented to the dragon's consort, it immediately impaled her body, but the consort realized that the spear was actually Kratos, so she stabbed herself with the heavenly dragon sword as well, and this caused Kratos to be trapped in her body. This caused the shield to be broken, but it did not matter because the goddess was also trapped, and her curse vanished, or so they thought. As they wonder what to do next, Sphere suddenly walks in, still mourning the death of her father, but suddenly, she pulls out a spear and starts attacking Jill. Jill notices that she's in a trance, so when Hadis shows up at the unalive Sphere, she stops him because she knows the real Sphere would never do such a thing. Just then, the spear takes a humanoid shape, claiming that her fate is tied to Hadis, but Jill grabs her by the neck and deletes it from existence. After the fight ends, Hadis turns cold towards Jill because what she did could have cost many lives, but Jill refuses to let an innocent woman die. He also says that the monster that possessed Sphere might possess other women too, so he asks Zeke and Camilla to gather every woman in town, and if they act suspiciously, they are to be executed without question. Immediately, Jill opposes the idea because it will invite opposition from the people, but Hadis cannot risk it all. Jill also realizes that Hadis wanted a young wife because girls below a certain age cannot be possessed, and since the original dragon's consort was unalive by Kratos, he's doing all this to make sure the same does not happen to her. Later, Jill is crashing out in her bedroom because she can't digest a man being right, especially because he's a clumsy idiot who acts like a moron around him. However, she also recalls that he's treated her with kindness and love, and she feels guilty for doubting him. Just as she leaves the room to apologize, she bumps into Hadis outside, and Rave tells Hadis to say sorry to Jill. Hadis argues that he did nothing wrong, but Jill asks to see his left hand, which was injured during the previous battle. He tells her it'll heal on its own, but she scolds him for being careless and also for not trying hard enough to riz her. She also complains that he doesn't even call her by her name, and this makes Hadis realize that they're really not fit to be in love. He also says that their relationship will only bring chaos to the world. But just as he turns around, 3 men arrive to inform him that the town is on fire and rioters are heading to the castle. Immediately, Hades knows what's up, so he puts Jill in a barrier and slices their necks, and when guard arrives, Hades tells him these men snuck into the palace to reclaim their women. He then asks if the town is actually on fire, and after guard confirms it, Hades tells him to put all the resources on putting out the fires, and he'll personally deal with the rioters. As he walks away, Jill begs him not to cause a massacre, but her words fall on deaf ears. Meanwhile, Camilla and the others watch the situation in town and are surprised by Jill's foresight, since a few days ago she predicted this would happen. Hugo adds that no one was harmed in the fire, yet this plan is exactly like the one Bale once told them about, which makes him think someone is carrying out Bale's plan even after his supposed death. He also informs the others that some assassins are heading toward the castle to take Hades down, and since he owes his life to the Emperor, he will do anything to protect him. Camilla then sends him off to the castle, and as she spots the squad of assassins in the streets, she sees that Bale is among them, along with Gerald, which means he never died in prison. Meanwhile, Jill asks Rave to let her out so she can stop Hades, but Rave assures her that if Hades wanted to destroy this town, he would have done it already. Jill is worried Hades will end up alone, but Rave says they can't do anything about it because more girls possessed by Kratos will show up to hurt Hades. Rave then reveals that since Kratos cannot return to her original form, she is looking for vessels to bring herself back. That is what happened to Sphere, but Jill is someone who cannot be possessed by the goddess, so she's acting as a shield to her curse. Rave also explains that Kratos is the goddess of love, and since she loves Hades, she believes anything is allowed in love. Kratos' ultimate goal is to marry Hades, so when Jill suggests they let her marry Hades and then cast her aside, Rave says that's very dangerous because Kratos is extremely possessive and one wrong move will result in a massacre. As Jill finally calms down, Rave reveals that Kratos will come after her because of her consort ring. Just then, Rave reveals that he's actually the Heavenly Dragon's sword, and his initial plan was to make Kratos possess Jill and then cut her down. But now he's protecting her, and this makes Jill realize that Hades has fallen in love with her. Immediately, she demands that Rave let her out so she can use the sword to slay the goddess. Rave says there's a lot she doesn't know, but Jill tells him to shut his trap and let her protect Hades as she promised. When Rave doesn't budge, she reveals that she knows a future in which Hades will burn the whole world down and become the next Eren Yeager. She then starts to tear up because Hades is carrying so much weight on his own without asking anyone for help. Rave tells her that Hades was shielding her from Kratos' attention, which is also why he never called her by name, and although Jill acts pissed, deep down she feels flattered. At that moment, she realizes that she also loves Hades, and she's going to protect him no matter what. She then uses the heavenly sword to break down Rave's barrier. Meanwhile, Jill recalls his childhood, when he asked Rave why no one was there for him, and Rave told him it was because of the goddess's curse. To break it, Hades was told to find a consort, so he spent the next few years studying hard so he could become the best emperor and protect everyone. At present, Hades watches in anguish as hundreds of men angrily demand that he release their wives and daughters. At the same time, he recalls Kratos guilt-tripping him for using Jill as a decoy and saying no one wants him alive. Hades tells the same thing to himself, but he remembers Jill saying she wants him alive, which messes with his head. As he wonders how he can protect this land, Hugo arrives, and Hades tells him to take everyone to the port. Hugo asks Hades what he plans to do, and Hades says he'll face everyone alone because he's a monster. Just then, the town bell rings, and Hades sees Jill on the top, openly calling out Kratos so they can end it in a duel. While Hades watches in shock, he doesn't know that Jill is doing this to take heat off him and pin it on Kratos. Just then, Kratos shows up in the form of a spear, and Jill blocks her midway, fighting her fiercely as the whole town watches. When Kratos tries to harm the townsfolk, Jill raises a shield to protect the town, but when it weakens, Hades uses his powers to protect the people. After that, Jill continues fighting Kratos, but as her magic nears depletion, she brainstorms on how to reveal Kratos' real body. She then realizes that Kratos also has a woman's pride, so she throws Rave away and asks Kratos to come out. Just then, Kratos returns to her one-spear form and tries to impale Jill, and Jill suddenly feels as if she's been in this situation before. That's when Kratos reveals that she was the same spear she died from in her previous life, and Kratos is the one who reverted time for her. Naturally, she's pissed because Jill married the dude she loves, but Jill tells her she doesn't know the first thing about love before breaking the spear in half and throwing it over the horizon. Soon after, Hades collapses from exhaustion, and Jill also begins falling as she's used to too much magic. However, Gerald appears out of nowhere to kidnap her, but Zeke and Camila show up to stop him. As Gerald prepares to yeet them, Jill knows she'll lose them again if she doesn't do anything. But Hades smacks Gerald in the back and catches Jill. When Gerald tries to backstab him, Hades easily blocks him and then mocks his goddess for getting defeated by Jill. He then warns him not to mess with Rave Kingdom because he's the main character before giving Gerald a Team Rocket exit. After that, in front of everyone, Hades praises Jill and proposes to her. But Jill is so annoyed that she says she wants to break up with him. Hearing this, Bro's heart stops, and he doesn't hear the next part, in which she said she loves him. Hours later, he wakes up in his room, where Jill calls him an idiot for passing out, but he's desperate to hear her say those 3 magical words. She annoyingly says she loves him, but she also wants to know what he feels. Hades definitely loves her, but doesn't have the balls to say it to her face. But Jill says he can take his time. She also notices several gifts he received from the previously angry townsfolk, which shows that people's opinion has definitely changed about him. She then notices a shawl among the gifts and puts it on him so he doesn't feel cold. So Hades starts teasing her by repeatedly saying that they love each other. Then suddenly, he embraces her and admits that he's a coward who doesn't believe he can have a happy ending. But Jill says she believes in him no matter what. He then asks her to say the magical words, but when Jill starts yapping at him for being annoying, he suddenly kisses her, which earns him a slap. In her previous life, Jill came face to face with Alencia, the Princess of Rave, and told her to surrender in exchange for her life. Presently, Jill wakes up in the middle of the night, worried. A few days later, she gets excited to see a dragon, and Hades says it has come to accompany them to the capital. She says she always dreamed of riding one, but dragons hate magical energy, so she's worried it will hate her. That's when Rave appears and tells her that dragons only hate magic from Kratos, and immediately, the dragons bow to her. Just then, Jill's pet chick named Sauté jumps out of her bag, and when Rave jokes that it looks tasty, Sauté pecks Rave away. Seconds later, Sphere shows up with Camila and Zeke, and the dragons give them a strange look because they both possess magic from Kratos. Before leaving, Hades leaves Sphere as the lord of this land in his absence, and with that, Jill and Hades fly towards the capital. After flying for the entire day, they camp in the forest at night and then take wing again the next day. On the way, Jill and Hades realize they both have 7 siblings, but 5 of Hades' siblings died due to his curse, and there's only one older brother left alive. Hades worries people will mistreat Jill too because of him, but she promises to protect him and snap his enemies in half like she snapped that spear. Soon after, Jill is mesmerized to see the royal capital, Realm, from a distance, and when she notices that Hades is worried, she tries to comfort him. Just then, they are attacked by giant magic circles, which confuse everyone because Hades is supposed to be the emperor. Immediately, Jill jumps off the dragon and cuts off one of the magic circles, but a swordsman appears behind it and manages to land a hit on Jill. His sword seals Jill's magic, causing her to lose consciousness, but Hades quickly grabs her hand. However, this allows the swordsman to land a hit on Hades as well, causing him to come crashing down on the bridge. The swordsman is impressed that Hades survived such a deadly attack, and to make matters worse, he's revealed to be Hades' uncle named George. The man is also in possession of the real heavenly sword, as opposed to the replica Hades carries, which essentially makes him the emperor. When Jill argues that Hades is the real king, George tells him to go back to the kitchen before swinging his sword at Hades. Luckily, Rave uses his magic to teleport everyone to a safe house, but this renders Rave useless for a while. That evening, as Jill and Hades chat, he tells her about a dragon nest nearby, and dragons are so protective of their eggs that they will execute even a dragon emperor if he goes near it. The only way to reach the eggs is if Rave is with them, but even now, Jill cannot see or hear Rave, and her consort ring has disappeared too. She then recalls that in the previous timeline, George raised a rebellion against Hades by declaring him a false emperor. At present, both Jill's and Hades' magic is sealed due to the heavenly sword, and she believes it's her fault. However, Hades assures her that she did the right thing, and then pulls her into a hug. When she protests, he pulls her cheeks and says he cannot see his cutie patootie bride depressed. As Jill promises to cheer up, Camila and Zeke join them, and they discuss what to do next. Camila points out that they're in the Duchy of Neutral, and during a power struggle, they often take a neutral position. However, a prince born here died on Hades' birthday, and they think it happened due to his curse. While the others think they are cooked, Hades smirks and says his uncle's heavenly sword will break in 6 months. When Jill asks how, he says that the sword is currently sealing his and Jill's magic together, and no sword in the world is strong enough to deal with that much magic for a long time. Hades calmly says their best bet is to just wait it out and make sure they're safe in that time, and Jill is astonished at how calm he remains even in such horrible situations. But 1 month passes, and she's getting tired of waiting. She urges Hadis to take back the capital, but Hadis and the others are content with their country life, which pisses her off even more. She then reveals that George has displayed the heavenly sword to 3 dukes, which has made him emperor in their eyes too. Jill is freaking out because they can be discovered any day, but the others are taking this too lightly for her liking. Thus, she declares that she will go out herself and work, because the Dragon Knights are looking for apprentices. When Hadis reminds her she has no magic, she claims she doesn't need it, and this job will earn her money, connections, and important info. Later, as she heads to the capital, Zeke joins her, admitting that he is also bored, while Camille stays behind with Hadis. Once in town, Jill notices dozens of swordsmen aspiring to be Dragon Knights, as well as poorly drawn wanted posters of Hadis. While inspecting them, Zeke recalls Hadis telling him to stay with Jill at all times because she's not familiar with the outside world. Hadis is so determined to keep her safe that he allows Zeke to rat him out if needed, much to Zeke's shock. Just then, they run into a bunch of dudes arguing outside the examination hall. But as the bell rings, a dragon shows up and starts rampaging through the area. While everyone runs for their lives, Jill and Zeke work together to fight the dragon, but the dragon does not fight back. Just then, a knight arrives and reveals this was part of the test, and they both passed with flying colors. The knight also tells them that the dragon is trained for this, but Jill still doesn't understand why it didn't fight back, unaware that Hadis is watching from a distance and he had used his powers to make the dragon freeze. Camilla wonders why the dragons don't obey Jill since she's the dragon consort, and Hadis reveals it's because she possesses Kratos' magic, which the dragons hate. She also asks Hadis why he doesn't use dragons to reclaim the capital, but Hadis says he wants to do it peacefully because people already fear him. Just then, he senses Kratos in the back of his head and gets worried for Jill. Meanwhile, the capital of the Dragon Knight joins Jill to congratulate her on passing, and she's none other than Alencia, the Princess of Rave. Upon seeing her, Jill recalls when she had Alencia captured, but Hadis himself showed up to free her. However, Alencia thought she'd be tortured by Kratos' forces, so she unalived herself. In the present, Jill shakes her hand and says it's a pleasure to be in her presence. A few days later, as Hadis hands Jill her lunchbox, she asks Camilla to look after this idiot before leaving with Zeke. As they both rush to the institute, Jill is excited because Hadis packed her not only food but also a dessert. Zeke is more focused on keeping a low profile, but Jill is looking forward to beating him in all the training practices. Later at the institute, Alencia tells the candidates that they will be interacting with her dragon, Rosa, and the goal is to make the dragon lower her head to greet them. Alencia also teaches them that a dragon is ranked based on the color of their scales, and among those with the same color, the eye shade determines the highest class. The god of dragons, Rave, is white in color, and his eyes are also golden. No other dragon has the same class as him. The next in line are black dragons, who rarely show themselves, so for all practical purposes, Rosa is the highest-ranking dragon they'll ever see in their lifetime. A Dragon Knight's rank is also determined by their dragon's color, and even if Rosa does not bow to them, there's a high chance lower-ranking dragons will. However, if Rosa bows to them, they will be headed straight for the promotion course. As the examination starts, Zeke goes first, but Rosa teases her with a blow, which makes Alencia laugh. She explains that being teased by a dragon is pretty much the same as bowing, but Rosa is wary of Zeke's seniors, who will be pissed if he passes first try. After that, Rosa swipes left on knights like she's on Tinder, until it's Jill's turn to bow. Jill is eager to have her own dragon, but Rosa gets so pissed that she attacks Jill, much to everyone's shock. That evening, she returns home heartbroken and heads straight to her room, leaving Hadis worried. Jill feels more useless than Sakura at how brutally she got rejected by Rosa, how her magic is still sealed, and she hasn't even seen Rave in weeks. Just then, Hadis enters the room, so she pretends to be asleep, but Hadis knows she's up, and he also knows what happened during the test. Then suddenly, he starts arguing with Rave over something, but Jill can't comprehend it because she can't see or hear Rave. Eventually, she figures out that Hadis wants to turn Rosa into medium rare steak because she hurt his precious wifey. Although Jill begs Hadis not to hurt Rosa, she can't help but feel flattered at how much he's willing to do for her. She then gets out of bed and tells Hadis that she loves him, which makes his virgin brain short-circuit. She then tells him she is hungry and wants him to cook something nice for her, so he brings her the food. After that, she happily tells him that she wants to tame a black golden-eyed dragon, but Hadis says even he hasn't seen one of those. When he asks her why she wants that specific one, Jill eagerly says it's because Hadis also has black hair and golden eyes, so it'll be like riding Hadis in a PG way. After she runs out of the room, Hadis shies away like a girl because his poor heart cannot take any more of this. A few days later, Jill is on town patrol, so she decides to use this chance to collect info. Just then, she runs into another knight named Lawrence, and seeing him here gives her the chills. Lawrence was a 200 IQ aide-de-camp in Jill's unit who always made the right calls, so Jill is worried he'll blow her cover. He notes that Jill has the same name as a certain noble in Kratos, and Jill anxiously says it's a coincidence. On the way, Lawrence tells her that those who are incompatible with dragons are sent on patrols, and dragons usually bow to those who are patriotic for their country. He also reveals that things have been tense here due to the theory that Hades is a false emperor, and everyone is waiting to see if George dies on Hades's birthday or not. Additionally, the Duchy of Neutral doesn't take sides in conflict and focuses on training dragon knights to maintain peace, which is why even those rejected by dragons are not dismissed. Just then, Lawrence says he's heard a rumor about Kratos, but Jill starts to freak out, thinking he's figured her out. Before he can say it, a dragon knight appears and asks them to deliver a message to Alencia. Jill asks who he is, so he introduces himself as Risteard, the second prince of Rave. Soon after, Jill delivers the message to Risteard, but she asks her to stay, as she has something important to discuss. She and Risteard, who are cousins, start talking about George and his claim to the throne, so when Alencia asks Risteard whose side he is on, he makes it clear that his loyalty lies with Hades. Alencia also agrees that Hades is the true emperor, and Jill gets excited thinking these two will be allies. However, Alencia makes it clear to Risteard that they cannot support Hades because they're from a neutral duchy, and it would cause political issues. After that, Alencia addresses Jill, apologizing to her over what happened the other day. She then reveals that the reason Rose threatened Jill is only because she saw her as a threat, so Alencia wants more investigation. Risteard declares that he will take Jill in as his attendant, which annoys Alencia because Jill is one of her knights. Soon after, he takes her to the training grounds, but the seniors give her strange looks because they don't deem her worthy of being here. Noticing this, Risteard asks them if they have any issues with Jill, and Zeke speaks out, saying Jill is terrible at cooking or sewing, so she's the worst choice for an attendant, but her skill with a sword is unmatched. Risteard then asks Jill to greet his dragon, Hild, but Hild flies away from Jill, and Risteard reveals Hild is afraid of Jill. The only other time this happened was when Hilda met Risteard's younger half-brother, Hades, so he chases after Jill to make her spill out who she truly is. Eventually, Jill escapes him and reaches home, but she feels devastated because of what happened today. However, her mood shifts when Hades comforts her, and she admits that she missed him a lot, making Hades flustered. He shyly admits he missed her too, but just then, Risteard finds her and is shocked to see Hades, his younger half-brother, farming vegetables in this time of crisis. Risteard wants to take Hades to Alencia, and as Zeke joins them too, Jill assures them that Risteard is not an enemy. After that, Hades and Risteard start fighting like siblings, and Jill proudly reminds them of her promise that she will find a way to escape this boring farmer life. Soon after, they find themselves in front of Alencia, who notices that Hades is not comfortable in her presence. At this, Hades reveals that both Alencia's and Risteard's houses see her as an enemy, so he doesn't want to be backstabbed by false allies. He also confirms that his magic has been sealed and that this is the perfect time to assassinate him, but he is certain George will self-destruct before that. Alencia asks what he means, but Hades refuses to elaborate and decides to leave the meeting, except his psycho shoddy wife pins him down and scolds him for acting like a brat. Hades argues that there's nothing for him to do there, but Jill reminds him that Risteard found him on his own, because he was worried for him. She also tells Risteard to treat Hades kindly, because he's like an untrained dog, which shocks Risteard because she's calling their emperor a dog. Despite this, Risteard tells Hades he's glad to see him, but Hades asks him not to be so nice to him because Risteard's sister is in the palace, and if George learns of his defiance, he might harm Risteard's sister. Alencia agrees with this, which annoys Risteard, so he starts to scold Hades for marrying a shoddy and wonders if he used some cheap tactic to woo Jill over. However, Jill assures him that she married Hades of her own will and vows to protect him, which finally shuts him up. He also notices that Hades looks pale, and it's because he can't handle all that cuteness. He then asks Jill to come home, but Jill asks Alencia and Risteard to help them. Risteard is on board, but Alencia quickly refuses, so Jill and Zeke quickly put knives to their throats to make them submit. Alencia quickly reverses the choke on Jill, but when they hear a knight coming, they quickly hide Hades. The knight informs Alencia that George is burning the town because he had reports that Hades is hiding here. Just then, Hild and Rosa show up at the window, so Hades comes out of hiding and decides to go with them to protect the town. Hearing this, Alencia and Risteard also join him since it's their territory, and once they see the state of the town, Hades uses Rave's power to rain water and blow out the fire, Much to everyone's shock, once the fire is out, Ristard informs Hades that George was using the crest of the Emperor's personal guard, and although no lives were lost, there have been a lot of burnt fields and houses. He even wants to join Hades with his night squad. But when Hades reminds him that his elders will not agree, Ristard tells him that he's serving the Empire. Just then, Alencia arrives and learns of the new alliance, so she quietly tells Hades that Ferris, the first princess of Kratos, wants to meet him. Ferris wants to be engaged to Hades as a sign of peace, and hearing this makes Jill horrified. Later, Ferris shows up with Lawrence, who is her attendant, and immediately tries to charm Jill. However, Hades bluntly tells her that he's never petting her disabled kitty because there is a high chance Ferris is a vessel for goddess Kratos. Ferris admits that she might become a vessel in the future, but she still has 6 years before she meets the age criteria, and she wants to marry Hades before that time. She also reveals that she came here without informing Gerald, so she does not support her brother's ambitions and wants to solve this conflict with peace. Alencia adds that if Hades marries Ferris, she will ally with him, but Hades has heard enough and decides to leave. However, Jill herself agrees that this is the best way to avoid a war, so she advises Hades to take Ferris as his bride. At this, Hades becomes enraged and asks Jill if she's selling him to Ferris, but Jill calmly explains that Hades only needs to spread the rumor about his engagement to Ferris and doesn't have to marry her in reality. Hearing this, Ferris realizes that Jill loves Hades, and Jill admits, saying she will not let anyone have Hades. Ferris is definitely pissed but acts all smiley and says things can be messy if Gerald thinks she's a hostage, so Jill casually tells her that it's up to her to convince her brother if she truly wants peace. Ferris agrees to it and tells Jill to look after Hades before leaving, after which they see that Hades has collapsed on the sofa because his heart is running a marathon at how cute Jill is. After he regains his breath, Jill menacingly tells Hades that she will cook his sausage and feed it to the dragons if he ever tries to get zesty with Ferris or any other woman. At this, Hades' legs start shaking, so he tells Jill he'll never even look at another woman and cook delicious meals for her forever, which fixes Jill's mood. A few days later, Hades blends with other cooks at the Dragon Knight barracks, and when Ristard asks why he's working all day, Hades says he's working so Jill doesn't suspect him of cheating. Just then, Alencia joins them and reveals they've made contact with Hades' older brother Vissel, as well as Ristard's sister Frida. Both of them are safe and ready to help, so it's time to put an end to this rebellion. Meanwhile, Lawrence informs Jill that Vissel is ready to assemble an army and make George surrender, but Jill is hesitant to trust Vissel. Lawrence also knows Jill doesn't trust Alencia and Ristard as well, which makes Lawrence think she already knows what's going to happen. Jill promises to tell him if he works for her, which catches him off guard. He then notices that she's washing underwear, and it makes him panic because Hades will burn everyone here if he learns she's being bullied. However, Jill tells him to keep it to himself because Hades will actually cry if he saw her working, and she'll have to pamper him like a baby. At this, Lawrence decides to borrow Zeke, so he can teach a lesson to those who made her wash underwear. Later, when she joins the others, she finds Hades crying in a corner because someone told him Lawrence saved her from getting bullied today. Jill tries to explain herself, but Hades doesn't listen and heads to his room. However, she follows him into the room, understanding what he feels, and talks her way into him. In the end, she sits in his lap and makes him promise not to get angry if she tells him the whole story. Hades agrees to behave, but when she reveals she was being bullied by the Dragon Knights, he gets enraged and announces a massacre. Immediately, Jill asks Zeke and Camila to restrain him. The following night, Alencia receives a message from Vissel, and it says he's agreed to lend them his troops. However, they will have to escort the new troops back to the stronghold, and Ristard is worried about being attacked during the escort. At this, Hades says he should go because he can control dragons, but Ristard says he can also tame dragons, so there's no need for Hades to go. This starts an argument between the brothers until Jill tells Hades that Ristard is worried about him, so Hades agrees to take Ristard with him. Alencia then reveals that she can't leave the castle or George will be sus, but Ristard can easily roam around, so it's a good idea to take him along. She also reveals that it'll take 2 days on horseback to reach the rendezvous, so she sternly tells her idiotic brothers to behave during that time. She then pulls them into a hug and asks them to come back alive, also telling Jill to take care of her bros. The following day, the squad heads out, and almost immediately, Camila and Lawrence start bantering with each other. When Ristard asks Jill if these three would be okay, she states that they're really good at their job despite acting like idiots. Just then, they go ahead to scout the area, and Hades expresses his jealousy over the fact that Jill chose Lawrence as their guide. Jill assures him that the rumors surrounding her and Lawrence is just a part of their disguise, but even then, Hades feels jealous over it. That's when Ristard tells him to act more like an emperor and not embarrass them in front of his subordinates. At this, Jill starts to feel a little jealous, because Hadis now gets along with his siblings, which he finds really cute. As they join Camila, she also points out that Lawrence had no business being here, but Jill handpicked him, so she must be hiding something. Finally, Jill reveals that Lawrence is not Ferris's attendant, and he actually works under Prince Gerald. Turns out, his sister was taken by the Southern King of Kratos, who claps more chicks than Johnny Sins, so Lawrence became Gerald's subordinate to free his sister. Lawrence knows that Gerald holds him in his palms, so if Lawrence is dragged into this mess, he'll find ways to survive. Hearing this, Camilla asks Jill to share such things with them in the future, and Jill agrees to be more vocal. As they continue, Hadis praises Jill, so she asks why he lets her do anything she wants. Hadis says it's because he wants to see what she's capable of, and even if she makes a bad decision, it doesn't matter because he'll be left standing in the end. That night, as Lawrence joins Zeke and Camila, he shares his worries that this might be a trap and Vissel might betray them. He also believes that someone from within is a traitor, and once Hadis is captured by the enemy, Alencia and Ristard will have no choice but to surrender. He even suggests a new formation which will allow Jill to see traps since she's really smart. Camilla tells Lawrence that he's pretty smart too, and Jill told them about his sister as well. Zeke then asks him if his sister is okay, and Lawrence says she was fine when she sent the last letter. Just then, he tells the others to stay silent, and they watch in shock as the Imperial Knights dragons fly toward neutral. However, Lawrence tells them not to focus on it because they can't make it back in time anyway, and no one would press them too much because Princess Ferris is also in town. He also points out a hiding spot for them in case of an emergency, and although it's close to the dragon's nest, he thinks they'll be safe as long as they don't get too close to the dragons. When Zeke asks why he's helping them, he says it's in his best interest because if he pulls through, he will be promoted, so he'll do his best to make sure they win. He also notes how Jill would have been treated as a goddess with her magic and skills back in Kratos, but he chose to help Hadis and won the hearts of many. Lawrence then admits he has a crush on Jill, but he knows it will never go anywhere because she's not going to leave Hadis. He also believes Zeke and Camila serve Hadis because of Jill, but Zeke assures him he will serve Hadis even without Jill because that man was willing to give himself into Project Jill. After that, he goes back to sleep, and Camila feels guilty for being wary of him even though Lawrence is a good guy. The following day, the squad is on the move again when they notice Alencia fly over them on Rosa, which confuses Hadis because Alencia told them she couldn't leave the castle. Immediately, Jill tells everyone to stay put and rushes towards Alencia to ask if something important has come up. Alencia says they're walking into a trap, but just as Jill turns around, she holds Jill hostage and dozens of her knights surround the others. Jill asks her what she's doing, and she says she's truly sorry with a guilty look on her face. Just then, George shows up with his dragons and tells his men to capture Hadis, while Jill begs Alencia to rethink her choices because her brother is on Hadis's side. Apparently, George promised Alencia that he won't hurt Ristard, which makes Hadis think Ristard also betrayed him. However, when Ristard tells Zeke and Camila to protect Hadis, he realizes that he hasn't been betrayed, so he tells them to leave him and escape. He then picks up a sword and single-handedly destroys the enemy knights before aiming for Alencia's neck, but Jill stops him at the last second, telling him not to waste his energy too much. Finally, the exhaustion catches up, and Hadis collapses, so George immediately pushes Jill off the dragon. As she falls, she recalls her promise to protect the Emperor, right before George uses his dragon's fire breath to cook her. Seeing this, Ristard is horrified, but Camilla tells him to focus on escaping, as Jill won't die so easily. Just then, they find themselves surrounded by knights, so Jill's pet chick Saute pulls out a magical bear from his bag, which transforms into a titan and uses laser beams to destroy the knights. As George and the others leave, Alencia suggests they look for Jill's corpse first, but George is certain no one except Daenerys Targaryen can survive being cooked by dragon fire. Meanwhile, Hadis is captured and is taken to the capital where he will be executed. Later on, Jill wakes up in a strange cave where she comes across a purple-eyed black dragon, who reveals she teleported her here on Rosa's request. The dragon initially thought Jill was the dragon consort, but after seeing that Jill has no magic nor a consort ring, she tries to cook her alive. Jill hides behind a rock and tries to reason with the dragon, but she disapproves of Hadis's choice and vows to end Jill's life. As Jill hides, she spots some cracked eggshells on the ground with magic flowing through them, which means she's in the dragon's nest. At the same time, Lawrence and the others escape their pursuers successfully, but they still don't know what that bear was. Ristard believes it must be one of Hadis's creations, but he's more concerned about their next move because Alencia has betrayed them and he can't go back to retrieve his dragons. Not only can't he call his dragons, He believes his dragon Hild has already been disposed of, so they're in a really bad situation. Meanwhile, Hades dreams of living happily with his siblings, but when he wakes up in a cell, reality hits him that he's been betrayed by his sister. Alencia is also there, and she promises to convince George to let Hades live normally, but Hades announces that he's an emperor. Back in the cave, the dragon calls Rave naive for picking Jill because she got Hades captured and even allowed the goddess to seal her magic. Immediately, Jill realizes that the heavenly sword George possesses is created from Kratos' spear, and this makes her burst out laughing. She then declares that she will rescue Hades, but the dragon tells her that no human who enters their nest leaves alive. Just as she attacks Jill again, Jill leaps into the air and stabs herself with the magical eggshell, which gives her enough magic to knock out the dragon with a single attack. She then notices a black egg in the nest, so the dragon tells her that whenever an emperor is born, an egg of a golden-eyed black dragon appears and hatches after 10 to 20 years. However, if Hades dies before that, his heart will feed the egg, and it will be born a monster. She thinks Hades also knows this and is banking on this monster to destroy the world after his death. But knowing what happened in the future, Jill tries to comfort the egg. When the egg reacts to her touch, the female black dragon is shocked and even apologizes for mistreating Jill. Jill quickly forgives her and asks for her help in rescuing Hades, or her egg would turn into a monster. At this, she agrees to let Jill ride her, and after they leave the nest, Jill asks the dragon for her name. When she says she doesn't have any, Jill decides to name her Steak. Meanwhile, Hades asks Alencia why she thinks Jill stopped him from ending her, and Alencia says Jill must feel pity for the emperor who is betrayed by his own sibling. She even admits that Hades did nothing wrong, and she's the one who failed to be his older sister. But Hades never expected her to be a sister to begin with. Meanwhile, Zeke and the others are hiding in a cave when they see a black dragon approaching, which makes him nervous. But when they see Jill riding it, they sigh in relief. Soon after, Hild and the other dragons show up as well, and Jill reveals she called them through Steak. Just then, Sada returns with the magical bear. So with the whole squad back together, Lawrence cooks up a plan to rescue Hades. Soon after, Alencia is informed of a black dragon approaching, and Hades smirks because he knows Jill must be the one who tamed it. As the counterattack begins, Jill goes straight for Alencia, who is guarding Hades. She then asks Steak to fly away with the cell holding Hades, but it has been protected with anti-dragon magic. Because of this, Jill has to fight Alencia head-on. But after her sword breaks, Alencia tells him to give up and even promises to protect Hades. However, when Jill asks her why she betrayed Hades in the first place, Alencia places a sword to her neck. Just then, Ristard pulls up with his spear, demanding that Alencia give them an explanation for her betrayal. When Alencia invites him to join her cause, he refuses, as he's already pledged his loyalty to the one true emperor. So Alencia reminds him of his younger sister. Ristard thinks she's blackmailing him, but she quickly pushes him away from George's attack. Ristard then confronts George, calling him unfit to be an emperor, and goes in for an attack, but George easily pushes him back. Alencia asks George to let her handle Ristard, but George tells her to shut it because he's already faced many problems because of her. He then turns to Ristard, telling him that if he's unfit to be the emperor, then so is Hades. Alencia begs him not to say anything more, but George refuses and hands a scroll to Ristard. The scroll read that after Vissel was born, his mother got freaky with a guard and gave birth to Hades, which means he is not their brother. But since he's still the dragon emperor, Ristard falls to his knees upon realizing that none of them are related to the dragon god Rave, so he asks George to make it public so Hades can be the only one emperor. However, George refuses as he doesn't care about the truth and only wants their family to continue ruling Rave. Alencia tells him that Hades doesn't know, so they should settle this peacefully, but Ristard has dignity and refuses to live this lie anymore. At this, George decides to unalive him and Jill, but just then, they all feel a chilling presence. As they turn around, they see Hades, free from his shackles and smirking like he's about to make the Grim Reaper busy. Not only that, but Hades has also heard their entire conversation, but he's not interested in any conversation because he's about to pass judgment. He admits that despite his curse, he wished to have a happy family, so when Alencia tries to talk to him, he tells her to keep his traitorous mouth shut. At this, George tries to get a quick one on Hades, but he's shocked to see that his attack has no effect on Hades. George calls him a monster, but Hades says they're the real monsters for finding excuses to end him. So now he'll unalive them without an excuse. As he showcases her emperor powers, they all find themselves at Hades' mercy, and Jill sprints into his arms, begging him not to do this. However, Jill cannot find himself to forgive them for ruining whatever family he had left. Jill fears history will repeat itself if she doesn't do anything, so she tells Hades that they can make a family of their own, which finally makes him stop. He further says that they can make Ristir and Alencia marry their daughter and son respectively, which will make them family, so Hades can still live his dream. She also reminds him that she's not his blood relative, yet they're like a family, which makes his eyes tear up. She then promises that she'll make him happy no matter what, and this activates Hades' inner Pookie. However, George refuses to give up, so Hades tells her to give up his fake sword and his claim to the throne, or he'll have a worse death than Robb Stark. George still doesn't listen, so Ristir tries to knock some sense into him, but George says he does not believe Hades will let them go so easily. Alencia says she believes Hades because he could have ended them already if he wanted to, yet he forgave them despite the crimes they've committed. This finally pushes him off the edge, so as Stake and the others corner him, George gets consumed by the fake heavenly sword and transforms into an ugly dragon. However, Stake quickly reminds him that he's a weakling, so George runs away to cause a rampage in the kingdom. Jill wants to chase after him, but Hades tells her to stay put and let the Emperor deal with this. Soon after, Hades catches up to George, and after thanking him for serving the kingdom, he deletes him with a one swift strike. A few days later, Jill is talking with Zeke and Camilla about how her magic hasn't returned, and Camilla finds it weird because the sword that sealed her magic was destroyed. In the background, Ristir is forcing Hades to call him Big Bro when Alencia shows up and stops Ristir, saying they have no right to be so frank with Hades. However, Ristir tells her Hades forgave her already, and Rave has also accepted them as family, so she should stop acting so reserved. She admits that he's right, and then Hades hesitantly calls Ristir Big Bro, making him laugh like a maniac. Jill then asks Alencia to watch over Hades during the parade because she won't be there, mainly because she's barely 4 feet and can't see over the fence. She also notes that she should be growing up because her birthday passed recently, but this makes Hades' heart stop because his wife's first birthday was wasted. He then announces that he'll cancel today's parade to celebrate Jill's birthday, but when Ristir says he can't do that, he starts whining like a toddler. However, Jill calmly tells him they'll celebrate her birthday after the parade, so Hades promises to give her the biggest party in Rave. Just then, Zeke realizes they haven't seen Lawrence around, so Alencia reveals he was assigned a guard to Ferris on her return to Kratos. Hearing this, Jill asks Rave to take her to the port, where she meets Ferris to see her off. As usual, Ferris acts all friendly and says she heard George and Hades fought together against a monster, but George fell in battle while protecting Hades. Although it's far from the truth, Jill believes Lawrence came up with this story to avoid chaos. She then asks Ferris if she was the one who gave the fake heavenly sword to George, noting how the medium of the sword is still alive and has kept their magic sealed. Surprisingly, Ferris admits to it before standing on her feet and revealing Kratos' spear, which is the reason why she came to Rave. Declaring her an enemy, Jill raises her sword, but Ferris casually tells her not to get executed like she did last time, which sends shivers down Jill's spine. She asks how Ferris knows of her previous life, but Ferris simply says she wants to make Hades fall in love with her. Jill argues that won't happen because Hades loves her, and she loves him just as much, only for Ferris to play mind games by reminding her how he cast aside Gerald before. Despite this, Jill declares that she will love and protect Hades till the day she dies, so Ferris tries to give her an early exit, but Jill blocks it with her Rave sword. She then instinctively teleports on top of the tower, and in the meantime, Hades is addressing his people below. After the speech, he tells everyone that he's married Jill and plans to have many offspring with her, which makes her blush. She then jumps from the top into his arms, promising herself that she will protect Hades and his loved ones no matter what. That is it for this video. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the video and subscribe to the channel for similar content. If you want to see more recaps, watch this video on screen.